Greetings on this Friday for lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream, as we are with you 4 days a week, Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time, broadcasting on Facebook Live. You can find us most easily by typing in lcpioneers.com/live, as we keep you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and members from our Lewis and Clark College community. Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Goff. I am the play-by-play voice and director of athletic communications for Lewis and Clark, the Pioneers out of Portland, Oregon, and members of the Northwest Conference, a 9-team conference competing with 19 intercollegiate athletics programs at Lewis and Clark, with other teams from Northwest Oregon and the state of Washington. And as a member of NCAA Division III, a chance for us to compete on a national stage with over 430 other institutions nationwide. And during non-pandemic times, certainly, as overseas study has been canceled for 2020-21, a robust overseas study program so our students can experience the globe with experiential liberal arts education. It truly is a unique opportunity just 6 miles southwest of downtown Portland, Oregon. As I mentioned, keeping you connected with student athletes, coaches, alumni, and different members from the community. And we have someone today who kind of fits almost all of those categories, certainly 3 of them, as an assistant coach now with the golf program, as an alumnus, and a former student athlete. We're excited we'll bring in Drew Groshong in a few minutes, a former men's golfer at Lewis and Clark, catch up with Drew and see what brought him to Lewis and Clark originally and what he's been doing since he graduated back in 2017. We invite you to get involved with the program. You can do so through our Facebook Live comments. You can always let us know if you have a question for our guest or a comment, and certainly give suggestions for future guests as we continue the show into the 46th week, I want to say, next week. It's been crazy as we started it back on March 31st, 2020. You can also email us anytime, sports@lclark.edu, and you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our location on both of those platforms is LC Pioneers, as we keep you updated entering spring 2021, beginning on Tuesday next week. Our website is updated with the latest information. As you can see, past interviews with Lewis and Clark, lcpioneers.com live guests. We had Coach Matthew Burrow and Assistant Coach Emily Thomas yesterday on the show from the cross country program. We also have updates on anything related to athletics and COVID at lcpioneers.com/COVID, whether that's NCAA information, Northwest Conference information, or something very specific to athletics from the county, state, or the federal government. And then, of course, a link to Lewis and Clark College's landing page of the same concern. Right now, you see it right there on your screen. Winterim is going on. Today is the final day of the Winterim program from the Bates Center for Leadership and Entrepreneurship. And that's a really neat event because you have an opportunity for pitches, and students are actually able to get help and mentorship through this program. That pitch competition is today, and because the program is virtual, an opportunity for you to watch as well. You can go to that link on lcpioneers.com to find out more. And our past shows are available in the fan zone at lcpioneers.com, but also on our YouTube page. We always appreciate when you subscribe to our YouTube page, as once competition does resume, we'll continue to add other content to that location as well. All right, let's bring in our guest for today, a class of 2017 graduate from Lewis and Clark, and now an assistant coach with the Lewis and Clark golf program. We're excited to welcome in Drew Groshong to the program. Thanks, Drew, for taking the time to join us and catch up on how things have been going over the last 3 years. I mean, 3 years since you graduated from Lewis and Clark, and it's pretty incredible to stay in touch with you offline, but now that we have a chance to see how things are going with you on the show, kind of just give us that idea of, as the calendar turns to 2021, how are you holding up?
I'm good. First, thanks for having me on. I was excited when you reached out. I've always liked working with you when I was a student and then as a coach now, so thank you for asking. But I've been good. I think 2021 is more of the same for me. I'm pretty busy with school. I'm to the point now where I've got to be deciding what my future specialty is going to be and applying to residencies here in the next 6 to 10 months, which is exciting. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And we're going to talk more about your experience as a medical student in just a few moments, because one thing that's neat is you're doing this at OHSU, and we've talked long about the distance between OHSU and the Lewis and Clark College campus. But first, let's go back to the origin story, right? Ultimately, you choose Lewis and Clark to compete at as a golfer. What was it about the opportunity to come to Portland and play for the Pioneers that really intrigued you?
So I first applied to Lewis and Clark just because my dad had gone to Lewis and Clark 30 years before, but I didn't really think I was ever going to go. And then I applied and sent out an email to a bunch of different coaches in golf and heard back from the Lewis and Clark coach at like 8:30 on a Sunday when I'd sent the emails out at like 8. And so that made me a little more interested to just come check out the school. When I got there, I mean, we always talk about how the campus is great and being on the hill is kind of a really wonderful experience. But for me, it was the guys that were a year above me that I started talking with when I was on campus, where I immediately knew that I wanted to be at Lewis and Clark, and that was where I thought was going to be the best chance for me to go. And then I didn't really go to school to be a golfer. That was just kind of a thing that maybe opened up some doors or helped me figure out where I might apply. I went to go for the education, and hearing more about Lewis and Clark's program was kind of the final thing for me and made me know that I definitely wanted to end up at Lewis and Clark.
And let's elaborate on the academics. Specifically, you choose biology for your degree program and pursue that as a major. What was it about some of the academics and some of the specifics, whether it was things that you remember from before you went to Lewis and Clark, and you're like, this is the thing, or even that you experienced while you were at Lewis and Clark that kind of confirmed some of those notions prior to heading to Palatine Hill?
Yeah, well, I knew I was kind of interested in medicine as a potential career going into college, and so one of the things that came up with Lewis and Clark early on was I just looked up top biology schools, and that was one of the ones listed. Being on campus, I think having the small class sizes is great, but for me, what that really did is I was interested in human body and learning more about how that kind of drives outcomes. And so as I got working, I ended up working with Keller Autumn a lot, had multiple classes with him, and ended up doing my thesis with him on biomechanics. And we don't have a biomechanics program at Lewis and Clark, but his research had kind of been in the same area with animals. And so I asked if he would help me out, and his willingness to dive in was what allowed me to do that. And for me, that was a big thing with Lewis and Clark is, hey, maybe we don't have the specific thing, but we can make it, or we can support you to have the best education that you can have. And so that was really great, and is something that I will always appreciate about the education at Lewis and Clark.
Drew Groshong is our guest on lcpioneers.com live, a class of 2017 graduate from the men's golf program. And it's neat to hear you say that, because you talk about that experiential liberal arts education and being able to tailor things because of the class sizes and the professor relationships. How did relationships become a thing at Lewis and Clark, whether it was with coaches or other professors or even your teammates? How do you describe the quality of the relationships that you build while at Lewis and Clark?
I think the teammates specifically are some of the people that will always be some of my best friends. I mean, we spent a lot of time together, obviously, but you said I'm 3 years graduated, which makes me feel really old and not very accomplished at this point. But I still keep in touch with multiple guys on the team and feel like I always will. Roommates that I had, also people that I always try to keep in touch with. I just feel like it's such a small community, and then you find your space within it, and that really leads to lifelong bonds. I think the teachers, it just helps having a small, or the professors, it just helps having a small class size, because then they actually get to know you. I'm not somebody who's extremely vocal in class, and so I would probably be somebody who sits in the back and would not be noticed in a class size of 100. So having a smaller group where it can just be more of a collaborative thing really helps me and led to maybe a benefit for me.
And you kind of have given us a glimpse into your reasons for becoming a collegiate student athlete and how it was that mix of the academic priority and then the chance to still compete at golf. But you did it at such a high level, too. I mean, you're one of the only Lewis and Clark student athletes to win one of the championship events with the Fall Classic. What was that transition like to playing golf at the collegiate level, and describe some of the moments where you did feel like, wow, I'm really able to do this at a high level in college?
Well, I can start by saying I never felt like I was able to really do it at a high level. I just was happy to be able to go play somewhere and do it and have fun competing at something. I didn't pick a college based off of athletics. For me, athletics were always just a bonus that I got to do that. And golf is expensive, so to have it be free when I was doing it in season was definitely a big bonus. I didn't feel like that I wanted to do it as have sports be my priority. So looking at a Division I program wasn't something I was ever interested anyways. And so finding that education first and then just having Lewis and Clark being a place where I could play golf and enjoy doing it was all I was ever looking for.
Well, and that's interesting too, because you described this thesis and how it had a golf related component to it. So you kind of mix those two topics when you come to build the thesis. For those who don't know, describe what the process is for selecting thesis work and then some of the things that you're most proud of with the outcome.
Yeah. So the process at Lewis and Clark, at least when I was doing it, was you had to find two different mentors, and maybe you do research in what they're interested in or what their lab specializes in. I can't speak to a thesis outside of the science stuff because I just never looked into it that much. For me, I was working up at OHSU doing research with their physical med and rehabilitation group. And so I got talking with him about things that I could maybe do involving the human body that would be an interesting question and something that hadn't really been studied before. And one of the things we came up with is the difference in ACL tear rates between men and women. And so then I brought that to Keller Autumn and said, hey, I want to look at how the golf swing kind of demonstrates how males and females move differently. And he was like, I have no idea. I know nothing about golf. I don't do a lot of human biomechanics, but let's do it. And let's find somebody who can help out. And so one of my teammates at the time was a physics major, and he got me hooked up with somebody in the physics department to be my number two. And that was really cool because it was a professor I had never met, I had never worked with before, but another student saying, hey, this would be interesting, you should try it, and he dove right in also. And so that was my process, at least, for getting it started. Something that I'm just most proud of is all of my test subjects were just the golf team. And so the fact that we were all close enough that they would all help me out was great. And then the results I was able to find ended up showing a significant difference between males, females, and that was something that hadn't been found in the literature before. And so that was something I was proud of with a small sample size to be able to have a deliverable outcome. I thought that was really cool.
And so now you transition to medical school at OHSU. Before you get into the specifics of the medical program, let's talk about Oregon Health and Sciences University because it is so close to Lewis and Clark. I was fortunate because my daughter had to get some treatment at Dornbecker Children's Hospital, which is right there at the OHSU campus. So fortunate in the sense that with work and being able to take her to appointments there and being so grateful to that staff, that was one moment where I kind of realized, wow, this is legitimately close to campus. It's not hard to get to. What was the advantage of working with OHSU as a student? What were some of the opportunities that you had there?
So I, through some connections, ended up knowing a couple of doctors who were in that physical med group. And so I kind of had it in that way, but there's so many volunteer programs and research programs at OHSU that they want to help undergrad students, and they want us to be engaged and have that ability to either learn, further our education, or if it's research, maybe get paid some too. They want and find benefit in us being there and helping them. And the fact that it's a 5-minute drive it was a bonus for me. I mean, I was busy enough with school and with golf that to then be able to do that in the evenings or do it on the weekends where I was off or do it in the summertime was really great and something that I definitely tried to take advantage of while I was on the hill at Lewis and Clark.
And so now that you're a medical student, what was it about OHSU's program and what are some of the things that you've learned so far? Give us an outlook on how long you'll be in the med program.
Yeah, so I started a year after I graduated. I took a year off. So I've been in it for about 2.5 years, and I have another year and a half. Right now, I've kind of done some of my core rotations that everybody has to do during their third year, and I'm to the point where I'm having to figure out what specialty is going to be what I want to do as a career going forward. And something that really brought me to OHSU was one, I had the experience of being there, and so I was excited by the program, but there's a big focus on rural medicine and serving and getting doctors to more underserved communities in the state. And I'm from Southern Oregon. I'm from a rural and underserved community. And so feeling like I wanted to go back there anyways, whenever I graduated from medical school, and then having a school that would support that and would really help me learn more about what it's like to take care of those communities, but also how I can best support them was something that's how I knew that I wanted to go to OHSU.
You're watching lcpioneers.com live, presented by PioStream. We're with you Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. And then if you miss any of our shows, you can watch them within the fan zone at lcpioneers.com or on our YouTube page. Drew Groshong is our guest, a former men's golfer for Lewis and Clark. And I remember before we did this show, another student athlete named Holly Hale was originally from Montana, and it ended up getting an opportunity to build a telemedicine program in her home state. And it sounds like that rural medicine aspect is something that's important to you. What are some of the ways or what are some of the challenges, probably better said, specifically when it comes to rural locations and quality medicine, quality healthcare?
Yeah, I think the big thing is always just going to be the support you have. And so at a place like OHSU, where we're kind of the end of the line a lot of the time. So other hospitals in smaller communities aren't going to have all of the resources, all of the equipment, all of the doctors of different specialties. And so being in a rural area, you're kind of the first line for a lot of people. And in some cases, you're trying to take care of whatever that problem may be. And in other cases, you're the person responsible for finding where they need to go and who best can serve them and how best to support them before they get there. And it's just harder to get doctors to go and be in rural places a lot of the time. And so kind of having that be something that I'm really interested in, something that I personally would just like living in a rural area anyways, in 5 or so years, it's something I know that I want to do, and I'm really excited to be able to do going forward. Yeah.
So how is golf still part of your life? Because I think of med school, right, and the intensity of programs like that. Do you still find time to play as much as you can?
Yeah, I mean, I like doing it, and so whenever I have a free moment, I go do it. Whether it's with guys that I graduated with, my girlfriend was a golfer at Pacific, and so we go out a lot and do that. It's something that I always do with my family, so we like doing it. Right now, a lot of the golf stuff that I do is still with the Lewis and Clark team, and so being able to still be around, having Coach Yen want me, or at least pretend to want me, still around with the team and be able to help them. That's a lot of my involvement with golf right now, because like you said, there's not a lot of like off time or downtime that I have.
Well, and it's great too to be out on a course and see you there, mentoring, at one point student athletes who you had played with as a student athlete, and then now obviously as you move further away from graduation, still being part of that staff. You referenced Coach Yen, there's Aaron Benedetti, right, and all these great members of the coaching staff at Lewis and Clark. So when you look at the quality of coaching and the opportunity that student athletes who come to Lewis and Clark have within the golf program, what comes to mind?
Well, I think our coaching staff right now is phenomenal, and I think Coach Yen brings so much enthusiasm to it and really makes Lewis and Clark such a open and welcome place for all of the students, and makes people really excited to be at Lewis and Clark. And I think he just does a great job of, once students are there, supporting them however they need, or getting them but like having more opportunities for gear or things that are just kind of exciting when you're a student athlete. And I think Coach Benedetti, he joined the staff, I'm pretty sure, when I was a sophomore, and is just so knowledgeable when it comes to golf, and also just has such a nice way of explaining it to all of the different players, no matter what level they may be at, or no matter where they're at that specific day. He knows more than I will ever know, and he probably has forgotten more than I will ever know about it. And so it's really awesome for me to just see how these people mentor and teach our athletes, and it's something that I try to both emulate but also learn from, to both teach, mentor, and help my future patients too. I think that's really a benefit for me to be around this team and keep learning from them.
Well, you said at the top that you enjoyed getting the opportunity to work with me, but right back at you in the sense that when I first got to Palatine Hill in an athletics communications role, you were very helpful, eager to get the microphone in front of your face, which was not always the case with many, and obviously staying in touch and getting to see you as an assistant coach. Drew Groshong, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on the show today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that was a fun conversation. Drew shifted the schedule around. We were trying to get him on last week and wasn't able to accommodate that because of the medical school schedule that Drew's running. So now going back to an atypical sleep pattern, but still making time to join us this week. I can't say enough. And what I think one of the most interesting anecdotes about that interview specifically is the way that he tied the coaches into some of the ways that he can work with patients when he is completed with medical school. That's an interesting tie-in, but it kind of makes sense because we've seen data that supports how student athletes who compete in college have some attributes when they get into the professional world that statistically you don't see all the time. And I think that was an interesting tie-in to golf, athletics, coaches, and the medical profession. So I actually really found that fascinating toward the end of the interview. And also the dedication to rural medicine. I came from a very rural community in Montana. So it was Holly Hale from softball who we sat down to do a podcast episode with. We recorded, I think, about 3 of those and never really got the podcast off the ground. One thing we've been able to do with this show is keep it going now since the end of March 2020. And we plan, and because the infrastructure is built, we have the systems in place that we need, we plan to continue it once the pandemic subsides and we can get back to normal competition schedules. It might not be 4 days a week, but point being is like that was a really fun conversation, and it kind of reaffirmed to me that this is something that we should be doing at Lewis and Clark in the athletics department. And then obviously as people have joined us over the course of the show's run, it definitely continues to do so. So that was a worthwhile conversation, certainly with Drew. And it's neat to hear somebody, he talked about he didn't ever feel like he played golf at a high level. I thought Drew played tremendously at a high level, and it was great to have him as one of our golfers in the past and now as a coach in the future. All right, scheduled guests for next week. We have 2 confirmed. We'll have Benji Bromberg join us on Tuesday. That interview with Benji as a member of the men's track and field program. And then Scott Pasapia on Thursday is scheduled already. Scott is both an alumnus of the men's basketball program at Lewis and Clark, but now an assistant coach for women's basketball on the staff of Christina Williams. But what you can do is go to lcpioneers.com/live this weekend, and all of our guests, once we have them confirmed for next week, will be posted on that site. So you can always see who's coming up, even if we don't have that information for you as of today. And of course, our past shows available. Please watch them when you can at youtube.com/LCPios. So to you for joining us, to Drew Groshong for being here as well. I'm Ryan Goff. Thank you so much for having fun with us as we do Tuesday through Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live. And then, of course, go to our website, lcpioneers.com/COVID for specifics on anything regarding athletics and COVID-19, including information from the NCAA and the Northwest Conference. That's the first site of information where we'll put those updates. We'll see you again on Tuesday for more of the show, and certainly appreciate you spending time with us today. Please have a great weekend. We can't wait to see you again next week. Goodbye, everybody.
I'm Casey Jones, and I teach a range of classes: general chemistry, organic chemistry, and also some advanced classes. And I have a research lab that currently I have 4 students working with me as part of the Rogers program. The summer experience is a way to get really deeply involved in the science that is here and be able to start to define what might be what you want to do next. So the brown bag gives our students a chance to explain their research and really show the context and the application of what they're doing to a very broad range of students and faculty.
It's interesting to be able to communicate to other scientists what your work is, and it forces you to learn how to talk about your subject so that not only experts in your field can understand it, but others can understand it as well, which I just believe is a good life skill.
To talk about your research in a way that anybody can understand it really is a valuable experience, and it's something that you don't get a lot of practice for except in these contexts. Because oftentimes you're giving a presentation to a classroom filled with people who know basically the same things that you do, but in a brown bag, you have to be able to explain and provide motivation for everything that you're working on and why it's important and why it's relevant to be studying.
Probably the networking. Getting to talk to everybody, connect with people for the future is one of the most valuable things, and I did winterim last year, came back for more this year.
I think a way in which my liberal arts education has really helped me and my group formulate our ideas is that concept of critical thinking and having many different backgrounds. Me being an econ major and my two group mates being chemistry majors, we really get that well-rounded background, well-rounded ideas.
I think overall it's absolutely worth doing. You find yourself not only being more prepared for, say, well, this next semester, on top of being more prepared for life in general.